certainly like to welcome each of you back. Returning from our lunch recess, honorable members. I'd like to welcome you back from the lunch recess, and in particular, those of you who attended the Thanksgiving service commemorating the 284th anniversary of our parliamentary democracy and our worship experience at St. Agnes. I think we would all agree that the message by Archdeacon Arch I. Ramfully Brown was timely, challenging, yet instructive. It was given in simplicity but loaded with profoundness. His message to us was to strive for excellence as we raise the standard of representative democracy. I am not certain his unusual request at the airport will be granted, but who knows? The ministers will have to speak to that. So, honorable members, I thank you for your attendance this afternoon at the special service. And as was said by Archdeacon, unless we accept that we should all apply for our business license now to sell canapes, then the least we could do as Bahamians is to hold up the standard. It would be nice, honorable members, if you say amen to that. Amen. Thank you very much. Before we begin our proceedings, I'd like to just take this opportunity. I got a surprise visit today from my baby sister, Marva Major Brown, visiting all the way from Ottawa, Canada. Marva is a distinguished principal of an elementary school in Ottawa. She is one of those who have experienced brain drain. We would like to give her many incentives to return to her native land, but for now, let us welcome her visiting all the way from Ottawa, Canada. She's also accompanied by another longer gentleman with the gray hair just next to her, Emerson Major, my father. A very distinguished Bahamian in my mind, who is the root, and he has saw fit to have a shoot called Kendall Major, Honorable Speaker. And I also notice former Attorney General, Senator with us, McQueenie, and a member and the chairman of the Constitutional Commission. We welcome you also to our proceedings this afternoon. And many other friends who are also in the gallery, and I shall stop now while I am ahead and not call any more names, but we welcome each of you who are here this afternoon. Let us continue with the business by following our order of business. Introduction and swearing in of new members. Laying of documents by ministers. The chair recognizes the honorable member for Bain and Grandstown.
Mr. Speaker, I beg leave to lay on the table of the House, on behalf of the Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Works and Urban Development, Professional Engineers Board report for the period 13th August 2009 to 31st of December 2012. Professional Engineers Board audited financial statements for the year December 2009, and the Professional Engineers audited financial statements for the year ended December 2010.
Thank you, honorable member. Order that the documents be brought up.
Shane.
Order that the documents do lie on the table. Further laying of documents by ministers. The chair recognizes the honorable member for Golden Gates.
Mr. Speaker, I beg leave to lay on the table of the House a copy of the following: Price Control Amendment Number 7, Regulations 2013. Price Control Amendment Number 8, Regulations 2013. Price Control Amendment Number 9, Regulations 2013. Price Control Amendment Number 10, Regulations 2013. Price Control Amendment Number 11, Regulations 2013. Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Honourable Member. Order that the documents be brought up. Further laying of documents by ministers. The chair recognizes the Honourable Member for Golden Gate.
Mr. Speaker, I beg leave to lay on the table the National Insurance Board Annual Report for the year 2012.
Thank you, Honourable Member. Order that the documents be brought up. Further laying of documents by ministers.
Mr. Speaker,
The chair recognizes the Honourable Member for Golden Gates.
I beg leave to lay on the table the National Insurance Board 9th Actuarial Review of the National Insurance Fund as of the 31st of December 2011.
Thank you, Honourable Member. Order that the documents be brought up. Order that the document do lie on the table. Further laying of documents by ministers. The chair recognizes the Honourable Member for Elizabeth.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I beg leave to lay on the table of the House a copy of the following. Industries Encouragement Approved Product B in the Bahamas Order 2013. The Industries Encouragement Approved Manufacturer B in the Bahamas Order 2013. The Industries Encouragement Approved Product Bahamas Cigarettes and Tobacco Company Limited Order 2013. The Industries Encouragement Approved Manufacturer Bahamas Cigarettes and Tobacco Company Limited Order 2013. The Industries Encouragement Approved Product JS Steel and Supply Order 2013. The Industries Encouragement Approved Manufacturer JS Steel and Supply Order 2013. And the Bahamas Trade Commission Annual Report for the year ended June 30th, 2013.
Very well. Thank you, Honourable Member. Order that the documents be brought up. In order that the documents do lie on the table. Further laying of documents by ministers. The chair recognizes the Honourable Member for Golden Isles.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Speaker, I beg leave to lay on the table of the House a copy of the following. The Passenger Tax Amendment of First Schedule Order 2013. The International Tax Cooperation Amendment to Schedule Republic of Poland Order 2013. The Real Property Tax Amnesty Amendment Order 2013. Banks and Trust Companies Amendment Regulations 2013. The Deposit Insurance Corporation Financial Statements as at December 31st, 2012. And the Financial Intelligence Unit Annual Report 2012.
Thank you, Honourable Member. Order that the documents be brought up. Order that the documents do lie on the table. Further laying of documents by minister. The chair recognizes the Honourable Member for Central and South Eleuthera.
Mr. Speaker, I beg leave to lay on the table of the House a copy of the following. The Judges Remuneration and Pensions Act extensions to Judges of Appeal Amendment Order 2013. And the Judges Remuneration and Pensions Act Amendment to Schedule Order 2013.
Thank you, Honourable Member. Order that the documents be brought up. in order that the documents do lie on the table. Further laying of documents by ministers. The chair recognizes the honourable member for Bain and Grandstand.
Speaker, I beg leave to lay on the table of the House a copy of the Maritime Marriage Amendment to Second Schedule Number 2 Rules 2013.
Thank you, honourable member. Order that the documents be brought up. In order that the documents do lie on the table. Further laying of documents by ministers. Thank you, honourable members. Statements and communication by ministers. The chair recognizes the right honourable member for Centerville.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, honourable members are aware that the Constitutional Commission, headed by Mr. Sean McQueenie, Queen's Counsel, presented its report to the government on the 8th of July 2013. This report will be formally laid again on the table of this Honourable House during the course of today's proceedings. The report has, of course, received wide circulation in the country as a result of its distribution to the general public, including online, when it was presented to the government. The report, Mr. Speaker, contains 73 recommendations, of which slightly fewer than 40 would necessitate formal constitutional amendment. Such a process of amendment would in most instances involve passage of the amending bills through both houses of Parliament, with special majorities varying from between 2/3 and 3/4, following which the bills would have to be submitted to the electorate for approval in a national referendum. Having regard to the large number of constitutional amendments that full implementation of the Commission's recommendations would entail, the Commission in its report has advised the government that it would not be practicable to advance all of the proposed amendments at the same time, that instead the recommended reforms should be staggered over a period of years. The government is in general agreement with this approach, and in recommending this multi-phased approach to constitutional reform, the Commission has expressed the view that the process should begin with a first-round pick of issues of national priority that are likely to be supported by both sides of the political divide in Parliament. Following recent consultations that I've had with the Leader of the Opposition and Member of Parliament for Kalani, I'm satisfied that there is broad bipartisan support for the acceleration of constitutional reform on the following recommendations of the Constitutional Commission. Firstly, the amendment of the citizenship provisions of the Constitution to achieve full equality between men and women with respect to the acquisition and transmission of Bahamian nationality. And secondly, the expansion of the definition of discrimination in Article 26 of the Constitution to include discrimination based on sex as a prohibited ground, so that women would be able to enjoy the same level of protection from discrimination that men already enjoy. These two areas of constitutional reform are, of course, thematically connected. They are also, I think honourable members would agree, a matter of priority for the Bahamas because of international treaty obligations that require our nation to end all forms of legal discrimination against women. In common, I would say, with virtually all of the modern civilized world. Even more fundamentally than that, however, it is simply unacceptable that there should be any further delay in bringing about the full equality of men and women in the Bahamian society of the 21st century. Indeed, I will put the matter even more forcefully than that, by proclaiming it to be a moral imperative of the first magnitude that there must be a complete and definitive end to the second-class status of Bahamian women in relation to citizenship matters and on the subject of discrimination generally. There needs to be full and complete equality between men and women so that what is good for one is good for the other. To achieve this moral imperative of complete gender equality, recommendations 9, 10, 11, 16, 24, and 25 of the McCreaney Commission's report would have to be implemented. Mr. Speaker, these recommendations call for the following specific actions to be taken. 1. The citizenship provisions of the Constitution should be recast in gender-neutral language with a view to reflecting complete equality between Bahamian men and women in relation to the acquisition and transmission of Bahamian citizenship, including, in particular, the following matters. 2. A Bahamian woman who is married to a non-Bahamian should have the same constitutional right that a Bahamian man has to pass a Bahamian citizenship to her child at birth, irrespective of whether the child is born abroad or in the Bahamas. Honorable members are aware that at present there is no such constitutional right in relation to the foreign-born child of a married Bahamian mother where the father of that child is a non-Bahamian. 3. A Bahamian woman should have the same constitutional right that a Bahamian man has to obtain citizenship for her foreign spouse, but subject to amendments to the Bahamas Nationality Act to introduce further safeguards against citizenship claims that might be based on marriages of convenience. I should add that we in the government attach a great deal of importance to the need for these particular safeguards, having regard to what social experience has taught us about this particular danger over the years. 4. A Bahamian man who fathers a child with a foreign woman outside of marriage should have the same constitutional right that an unwed Bahamian woman has to pass citizenship to that child, subject to his proving paternity. Right now, Mr. Speaker, such a child would have to take the citizenship of his foreign mother, leaving the Bahamian father unable to pass Bahamian citizenship to his child. Indeed, as the Constitutional Commission has observed in its report, this represents a singular instance of the Constitution discriminating against men. In the interest of complete gender equality, therefore, this would have to be changed as well. 5. On the matter of gender discrimination generally, the word sex should be added to the definition of discriminatory in Article 26 of the Constitution, so as to make it unlawful to discriminate against any person based on sex. 6. However, a proviso should be added to make it clear that such an amendment to Article 26 would not overturn the long-established legal prohibition against same-sex marriages. Indeed, the Marriage Act already renders void any marriage that is not between two persons of the opposite sex. It will be important, therefore, to make it clear that any amendment to Article 26 to outlaw gender discrimination could not be construed so as to legalize same-sex marriages. The existing prohibition in this regard would therefore remain in place. Putting Combining the foregoing recommendations together, Mr. Speaker, it will be seen that 6 separate items would have to be enshrined in the amending bills to bring about gender equality under our Constitution. It should be noted that in all these cases, a 3/4 majority of the members of each House, first the House of Assembly and then the Senate, would be required to pass the amending bills. After that, assuming, of course, that the bills are carried in each House with the requisite majorities, the bills would then have to be submitted to the electorate for approval by a simple majority vote in a constitutional referendum. My government, again, having had the benefit of consultations with the Leader of the Opposition and Member of Parliament for Kalani, does not propose that there should be any additional items included in this first round of constitutional amendments. The referendum would therefore be limited to the specific items I have just laid out. As far as the projected timeline for this first round of constitutional reform is concerned, it is now anticipated, firstly, that the amending bills will be introduced in the House of Assembly before the end of the year. Secondly, that the passage of the bills through both the House of Assembly and the Senate will be completed by the end of February 2014. And thirdly, that a referendum on the matter will be held throughout the nation not later than the end of June 2014. Following an ample period for public education and discussion, which will be led by the Constitutional Commission. Before closing, Mr. Speaker, I should like honorable members to also be aware that the government intends to act upon another of the McQueenie Commission's urgent recommendations by appointing a new and separate commission to bring focused attention to the question of how children born in the Bahamas to non-Bahamian parents should be dealt with in relation to matters of citizenship and permanent residence. This, quite rightly, has been identified by the McQueenie Commission as a matter requiring urgent attention. I therefore expect to be in a position to announce the membership on terms of reference of this new Citizenship Commission in the very near future. Finally, it is evident from what I have already said in this communication that the McQueenie Commission will remain in existence to generally advise upon the implementation of the recommendations contained in its report and to play a leading role in the public education on constitutional reform that will take place in advance of the forthcoming referendum. Mr. Speaker, I take this opportunity to again express the thanks of the government to the chairman and members of the Commission and its secretariat for the outstanding work they have done to date in the service of the nation on this matter that is so vitally important to our constitutional democracy and our full well-being as a people. Thank you.
Thank you, Right Honourable Member. Order that a communication be brought up.
I've done it before.
The communication and the contents, including the Constitutional Commission, do lie on the table. Further statements and communication by ministers. The chair recognizes the honourable member for Bain and Grandstown.
Speaker, I wish to make 2 communications. Mr. Speaker, I wish to update this Honourable House on allegations made regarding the alleged abuse of detainees at the detention center by members of the Royal Bahamas Defense Force. As a result of investigations conducted into the allegations, it was determined by the defense force to bring charges against individuals concerned by way of proceedings in accordance with the Defense Act and regulations. The proceedings, which are being held in camera to avoid publication of matters which may compromise national security, commenced on Monday, the 30th of September, at the Defense Force Base Coral Harbor. A full report of the proceedings will be issued at their conclusion. 3 independent observers, namely Madam Justice Carol Albury, retired, Commander Leon Smith, retired, and Reverend Dr. Ranford Patterson, President of the Bahamas Christian Council, have agreed to observe the conduct of the proceedings. Their responsibility will be to monitor the conduct of all phases of these proceedings for fairness and transparency. Mr. Speaker, I am also to inform this House that Mr. Justice Emmanuel Sadabe, retired, the Reverend William Higgs, and Mr. Douglas Hanna, former Superintendent of Police, have agreed to serve on a committee to inquire into the administration and management of the detention center and to make recommendations for its efficient administration and management. This committee has been asked to complete its inquiry within a reasonable time and to submit a report to the government.
Thank you, Honorable Member. Order that the document be brought up, the communication. In order that the communication do lie on the table. Member for Bain and Grandstown.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, while the government is taking additional measures to address prevention of crime and criminality and to punish offenders for their criminal behavior, we also recognize our responsibility to ensure that such persons are adequately cared for and given every opportunity to be rehabilitated. In 2002, Amnesty International's annual report described prison conditions in the Bahamas as being cruel, inhumane, and degrading treatment. In response to the same, the then Christie government in 2002 pledged to make reforms to Her Majesty's prison. Shortly thereafter, the Bahamas Prison Reform Commission was convened to undertake a strategic review of the prison. The commission consisted of persons with a wide range of expertise, including physicians, pastors, law enforcement officials, and others. Its mandate included assessing whether the prison is organized and structured in keeping with 21st century standards, assessing the human resource policy with particular attention to personal development programs, career development, recruitment, training, evaluation, and promotion, specialist selection, stress, medical and other absences, early retirement and disciplinary action, medical facilities, and staffing. Additionally, assessing what structures were in place to ensure and monitor supervision and management accountability, analyzing the rehabilitation arrangements, including factors that help to determine eligibility for conditional and early release, and reviewing and making recommendations where necessary for the revision of incarceration policies and procedures, as well as the Prisons Act and regulations. A major task of the Commission was to ensure that the overall structure and governance of the prison was brought up to modern-day standards, and to ensure that there were provisions for the reformation of inmates as well. Among other things, the Commission found that the visiting committee was for the most part dysfunctional and it failed to provide the oversight it was mandated to provide in the Prison Act, and as a result, there was no ongoing mechanism to ensure that inmates were treated humanely, that the institution was functioning in an orderly and purposeful manner, and that established policies were being adhered to. They also found that the prison is overcrowded, and close to 1/4 of the inmates were incarcerated for minor, non-violent crimes, that there were very few structured educational or vocational programs at the prison, and that therefore 3/4 of the inmates were not involved in any organized work or school program. Thus, idleness was the norm rather than the exception. There was no effective and appropriate inmate classification system. Inmates were usually assigned to maximum security as a means of, quote, breaking them in, unquote, before determining their housing placement, and there is no established career path nor personal development programs for the prison staff, and female officers did not enjoy the same career opportunities as their male counterparts. Mr. Speaker, in 2003, the Commission submitted its report, which made recommendations for reform of our penal institution by providing for management practices which are in keeping with modern practices and focusing on developing the inmate through educational, vocational, and spiritual means in order to prepare them for reintegration into society. Their key mandates for reform included changing the name of the institution to the Bahamas Department of Corrections to be headed by a Commissioner of Corrections, addressing the perceived staff shortage and low morale and heightened staff efficiency by civilianizing many of the clerical and administrative staff, and making promotion criteria transparent and lobbying for career-long training, and reducing prison overcrowding. The bill that I am presenting this afternoon, Mr. Speaker, is to be known as the Correctional Services Bill 2013, which in essence has a dual focus: to foster the promotion of procedures which are in keeping with modern practices and focuses on the development of the inmate for reintegration into society upon release from prison, and to address some of the concerns outlined in the report. Mr. Speaker, my government laid out plans as they relate to correctional services in our 2012 Charter for Governance. It was clear to us at the time that Her Majesty's prison was in a state that we needed to address urgently. And as such, we advised that we would undertake many of the changes now reflected in the Correctional Services Bill. Accordingly, the legislation will repeal the existing Prisons Act, Chapter 208, and all accompanying rules made thereunder, and replace it with a more comprehensive, modernized piece of legislation in keeping with international standards. The bill will provide for its short title and commencement, of course, and for the terms which will be used throughout the bill, and highlights of the purposes of the Act, among other things, to provide for the continued protection of the public through the supervision of persons who are held in legal custody. It will provide for the facilities for such persons, that is, correctional and holding facilities, and in particular, provide for the continuation of Her Majesty's prison, which will be known as the Bahamas Department of Correctional Services once the bill is enacted. It will also provide for the declaration of suitable places to be a correctional facility. It deals with the administration and functions of the Department of Correctional Services, provides for the appointment of a commissioner, deputy and assistant commissioners, such appointments to be made by the Prime Minister, acting on the advice of the Minister. The appointment of other persons wishing to hold office in the department will be made by the Governor General, acting on the advice of the Public Service Commission. Clause 11 of the bill will provide for the functions of the department, which include providing academic, vocational, and technical training, continuing education, and counseling services to rehabilitate and prepare inmates for occupations upon their discharge. It will provide for a saving of appointment clause for those persons appointed under the repealed Act to retain their positions and duties on the same terms and conditions, and will provide for the establishment of a Correctional Services Review Board, which will replace and carry out the functions of the existing Visiting Committee. Mr. Speaker, it will provide also for the functions and powers of the Review Board, which is intended to act somewhat as the watchdog of the department. The bill provides further for members of the Review Board to have access to any part of a correctional facility and any inmate after prior notification of the Commissioner. The bill provides for an inmate work release account, whereby earnings of an inmate are deposited into an account with a recognized financial institution. The review board will be able to authorize for any earnings paid to the commissioner to the credit of an inmate to be applied or paid in accordance with the regulations. And that section further requires the commissioner to furnish every inmate entitled to earning with a financial statement on a quarterly basis outlining the details of the inmate's account. Mr. Speaker, the bill seeks to introduce new offenses and provides for existing offenses by inmates and other persons. Clause 43 of the bill seeks to grant the review board the power to authorize an inmate who has completed at least one-third of his sentence and has less than 2 years remaining day release to engage in work which he is directed to carry out, to receive instruction or training in a program established under the bill at an accredited institution approved by the Commissioner, and to participate in church services or programs to promote the success of reintegration of the inmate into society. There is a new provision concerning the electronic monitoring of inmates temporarily released, discharged, or removed for any purpose under the Act. There is also a new provision which seeks to provide for the establishment of development programs for inmates. On admission to a correctional facility, all inmates will be assessed by the classification board, which was introduced after the last report, which I believe you were a part of, Mr. Speaker, and periodically thereafter to determine his various needs and how he can benefit from one of these programs. The Commission may establish separate programs for untried inmates. One of the problems we have today, Mr. Speaker, is that there is no compulsion for inmates who are being held on remand to attend any type of classes. And one of the things, that's the problem that we have, is so many young men being remanded and waiting for trial, sometimes for excessively prolonged periods. And so this bill will have a provision which will deal with such deficits. There's another new provision to allow the Commissioner to establish a training advisory board, which will be responsible for identifying the staffing needs of the department, developing continuous staff improvement programs, and training locally and internationally, and establishing rank examinations and prerequisites for promotion. Mr. Speaker, at this point I would like to bring to your attention that the former superintendent of prison, Dr. Elston Ramming, who was a member of the commission, introduced many of these targets during his tenure as superintendent of the prison, and did an excellent job in that regard while he was there. And I'm happy to report that the new acting superintendent is equally enlightened and seeking to do the same things. Mr. Speaker, the existing Prisons Act is 70 years old, and while many of the provisions of the existing legislation have been retained, my government believes that this new correctional services bill is well equipped to bring the prison up to date with the realities of today, while still penalizing offenders of the law. I can also report, Mr. Speaker, that while the current Prison Act treats women as unequal, we have, Mr. Speaker, had the honor of promoting the first woman to the position of Deputy Superintendent of Her Majesty's Prison, Ms. Bernadette Murray. And we do have a classification board which is headed by a young man who has been promoted to the position of Deputy Superintendent Acting, Mr. Don Clare. Mr. Speaker, we recognize our obligations to adequately care for persons in custody, and we also recognize the importance of working towards the rehabilitation of these persons so that when they are released from custody, they are better prepared to be reintegrated into society. In closing, This bill and the accompanying regulations will, in my opinion, aid in improving not only the overall rehabilitation of inmates, but hopefully to assisting them in being able to integrate better into society and becoming law-abiding citizens with a minimum of recidivism. We also seek to tighten up on some of the existing privileges and to address matters relating to officers serving in the institution. I have to say that members of the prison staff feel, Mr. Speaker, that they are the stepchildren among the law enforcement agencies. But with the coming into being of the Correctional Services Bill, the appearance of that will change, as will the substance. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Honourable Member. Order that the communication be brought up. Order that the communication do lie on the table. Further statements and communication by ministers. The chair recognizes the honourable member for Golden Gates.
Mr. Speaker, I'm so pleased to stand on behalf of the good people of the great Golden Gates constituency and make this communication to the House of Assembly on the upgrading of the Department of Labor in Baileytown, Bimini. Mr. Speaker, members are well aware of the ongoing investment activities at Resorts World Bimini, in Bimini Bay, prior to its official opening by the Right Honorable Prime Minister on the 28th of June, 2013. Members are also aware of the recent groundbreaking ceremony of the company's second phase attended by the Right Honorable Prime Minister, the Minister of Tourism, a Member of Parliament for West End and Bimini, myself, and several other ministers on August 14, 2013. Mr. Speaker, the Office of the Department of Labor in Bimini is responsible for providing service to the residents of Bimini and Cat-Key, who today have a combined labor force of 745 persons. It is anticipated that the labor force in Bimini and Cat-Key will increase significantly as new businesses are established as a direct spin-off of the increased investments by Resorts World Bimini in Bimini and other investments in the years ahead. The Department of Labor, Bimini office, is located in Baileytown, Bimini. The space is extremely small and inadequate to facilitate the growing needs of the department in light of the Resorts World at Bimini Bay. The building's front door is in close proximity to the street. The equipment is outdated. There are no parking facilities, and the building is subject to major flooding when it rains. Presently, the office is manned by a clerk from the Consumer Affairs Unit and a senior clerk out of the Department of Labor in Grand Bahama office, who supervises the office and periodically visits the office to process labor certificate applications and facilitate conciliation meetings as the need arises. This office is clearly understaffed and does not have the capacity to deal with the myriad of labor issues anticipated with the ongoing development in Bimini and Cat-Key. Mr. Speaker, Resorts World Bimini currently employs 186 persons in its casino operations, comprising of 179 Bahamians and 7 non-Bahamians. The 179 Bahamians include residents from a number of family islands, namely persons from Bimini, 26 persons from Bimini, 80 persons from New Providence, 71 from Grand Bahama, and 1 person each from Abaco and Exuma. On the resort operations side, Mr. Speaker, there are 322 persons comprising of 312 Bahamians, which include 142 residents of Bimini, 64 persons from New Providence, 97 from Grand Bahama, 5 from Andros, and 2 persons each from Eleuthera and Exuma. Mr. Speaker, that means that Out of the 508 persons on a full-time basis at Resort World Bimini, only 17 or 3% are non-Bahamians. This is a sterling example of the government's policy of putting Bahamians first. And ensuring that Bahamians are reaping the benefits of their birthright. Mr. Speaker, the House of Assembly would be pleased to know that Phase 2 of the project to be completed by December 31st, 2013, is expected to be completed by December 31st, 2013, that's this year, and in anticipation of the increased amount of Bahamians to be employed in the new hotel, Resorts World Bimini recently hosted 2 job fairs, one in Freeport on Wednesday, 4th of September 2013, and I'm advised that more than 200 persons had to be turned away. And the second job fair was held in New Providence on the 5th of September 2013 at the Hilton Hotel. And the turnout was so great, Mr. Speaker, that its personnel had to spend another day in order to interview about 130 trainees of the National Training Agency at the Holy Trinity Activities Center, Stapleton Gardens, on the following day. I'm advised, Mr. Speaker, that Resorts World Bimini plans to hire an additional 300 persons by mid-December 2013. That's December of this year, thereby bringing its staff complement to an excess, Mr. Speaker, of 800 persons. Additionally, Mr. Speaker, during the construction of Phase 2, the company is expected to employ some 552 construction workers. These jobs are ready today, Mr. Speaker. Resorts World Bimini will provide suitable housing for the construction workers, as well as the 300 new employees that will be hired by the mid-December 2013. This is progress, Mr. Speaker, and the people of Bimini and indeed the wider Bahamas will be positively impacted under this PLP government. Mr. Speaker, I wish to encourage job seekers to contact the Bahamas Employment Exchange in New Providence and the other family islands and register their skills, which will assist us with recommending qualified, available persons to fill job vacancies. This is critical, Mr. Speaker, because Resorts World Bimini, when seeking to employ persons, will work in consultation with the Ministry of Labor and National Insurance, the Department of Labor, and the Employment Exchange to ensure that Bahamians are given first preference in all jobs at Resorts World Bimini. Mr. Speaker, Ferry Christie-led government is committed to putting Bahamians first and has taken a policy decision that labor certificates from the Department of Labor and work permits from the Department of Immigration will only be granted in cases where the government is satisfied that there is no Bahamian, and I repeat, that there is no Bahamian available to fill the vacancy. Mr. Speaker, we have the view that our policy on job creation opportunities will benefit all Bahamians in general and Biminites in particular. We in the Ministry of Labor and National Insurance, Mr. Speaker, are committed to improving the quality of service delivered to the people of Bimini and Cap Key. And to this end, the government of the Bahamas has made the decision to upgrade the department's office in Baileytown as a matter of priority and urgency. This upgrade, Mr. Speaker, will include the relocation of the office to new premises, including the manpower in the department by assigning a labor officer, an assistant labor officer, a clerk, and a janitress at the department office in Bimini. We'll also be upgrading the equipment, including computers, accessories, and furniture, and the purchase of adequate ground transportation. As stated previously, Mr. Speaker, with the anticipated increase in demand for services, especially labor and industrial conciliation, and processing of labor certificates on an accelerated basis in light of the Resorts World Bimini increasing investment activities, and the direct and indirect spin-off businesses, as well as job creation opportunities in Bimini, the upgrading of the Department of Labor office is not only necessary, but it is an an excellent example of good governance. Mr. Speaker, the PLP government led by the Right Honorable Perry Gladstone Christie is committed to putting Bahamians first, and the Resorts World Bimini project and the response of the government to provide the necessary services is only a small example of the great things ahead for the Commonwealth of the Bahamas. Thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Member. Order that the communication be brought up. In order that the communication do lie on the table. Further statements and communication by ministers. The chair recognizes the honourable member. The chair recognizes the honourable member for Carmichael.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Speaker, Khalil Gibram says progress lies not just in enhancing what is, but in the relentless advancement to what will be. I am pleased to advise of my ministry's plans for the execution of this year's National Youth Month celebration. Under the theme Celebrating Youth, the journey continues. I've had the privilege to attend a number of activities thus far. We started on Monday, and the division is moving very quickly to support their goals and activities for this fabulous month. Mr. Speaker, we must embrace the young people of this country, respect their dreams and visions of success, and give them the tools that are necessary to take the baton of national development and carry us forward, upward, onward, and together. This year, the major priority of my ministry is to connect young people to something positive, with hopes that many of their dreams, with our help, just may become reality. What we want to do is connect as many young people in the Bahamas as possible to great opportunities that may lie ahead. I'm hopeful that these connections will create the avenues which need to bring the aspirations to bear that they have. It is for this reason that in this, our 40th anniversary of independence, we launched the program 300 Connect. There are all of these vital institutions that are helping to shape the nation's youth all over the archipelago. But we want to bring all of them together in a meaningful way to engage and effect positive change in the lives of young people. We often talk about the 3 Ps, public and private partnership. Well, 2 Ps, we want to add 1, which is young people unite. As a nation, we must recognize that there are so many good and commendable things that our young people are doing, and for this, we should be proud. There are a significant number of young people who are positively impacting the growth and development and sustainability of a sound way of life, and we must celebrate them. Out of every 100 people that you see in schools and in colleges, 95 of them are on an upward road. Therefore, my ministry, in conjunction with the youth leaders of the Bahamas and with other key stakeholders in youth development, has planned a series of events which started this Monday. And today we are not only connecting with young people, but also with youth-serving organizations and youth practitioners all around the Bahamas. We recognize the value of many of our youth leaders and the great impact that their organizations have on the development of the Bahamas. This will be demonstrated this Sunday, October 6th at 3:30 p.m. This Sunday, October 6th at 3:30 p.m. at the Thomas A. Robinson National Stadium, as thousands of young people prepare to take the streets of our nation and our nation's capital with the annual Youth March. This march highlights the fact that our ministry is and has in fact been about making positive youth connections. This, Mr. Speaker, will be the largest youth march ever in the history of the Bahamas. Some 70-odd youth organizations have already signed up. As usual, we celebrate our youth through the execution of the annual Youth Recognition Ceremony on Thursday the 24th, the Gospel Explosion taking place on Friday the 4th at the Center for the Performing Arts,
and a fantastic play that will last for 3 days called Jailhouse Rock, put on by Therese Nixon on the 15th, 16th, and 17th. During National Youth Month last year, my ministry, for the first time ever, provided a very important summit for young people, which brought together youth leaders from all pockets of society and many islands across this land to address the issues that affect their lives. If colleagues would remember, this was the weekend when Hurricane Sandy passed through the Bahamas, and not one of these young people went home, called home, or actually blinked an eye. But they stayed and prepared a document that we will lay on the table of this House as a national youth policy at long last. Today, we are not only connecting with these young people, but trying to serve their goals and aspirations. We recognize the value of many of our youth leaders and the great impact that they have in their communities and the development of this country. Have you ever heard the saying that if all the trees in the forest were one tree, what a mighty tree that would be? Well, all of these trees that shelter the nation's young people must now join the branches so that together we can reverse the statistics and write a beautiful story about the beautiful future for these young people. This future can only be achieved when we connect youth leaders, civic organizations, corporate Bahamas, and young people together as one. I assure you that this Youth Month and throughout my leadership, this will continue to take place. As a nation, we must recognize that there are so many good and commendable things that our young people are doing, and for this, we should be proud. We saw the PYL here this morning, and I commend during this Youth Month to get the torch bearers out. I think, Turnquest, you can organize that as soon as possible for me. There are a significant number of young people who are positively impacting the growth and development and sustainability of a sound way of life, and we should celebrate because you're young. I know you could do it. This will be demonstrated for everyone to see during the course of these activities. We also will this year, Mr. Speaker, mark the launch of the second annual Youth Partnership Summit, which will provide a platform or the draft for the national youth policy to be addressed, and the issues such as education, unemployment, underemployment, entrepreneurship, crime, and violence will be discussed by young people for young people. In South Africa last year, the World Youth Summit, they came out of that with the notion that we shouldn't do anything for young people if we're not getting them involved in the process. And it's interesting that several of the documents that I have seen in the past were written by people over the age of 50. You see, Mr. Speaker, in this our 40th anniversary of independence, I echo the words of the first Prime Minister of the Bahamas, Sir Lyndon Oscar Pinley, who stated in 1975 that any policy consideration of economic, social, and any other form of development of this nation must essentially be geared towards involving young people, as young people are agents, the main agents of social and economic change. 1975. Mr. Speaker, the statistics today show that globally there is a youth bulge. There are more young people in the world today than ever before in human history. Ever before in human history. And this is the same for the Bahamas. Considering this large and ever-increasing group, coupled with the impact of globalization, unemployment, migration, and other factors, it is the country's duty to design a national youth policy that addresses the concerns of its youth. This is a way of making youth development a part of our macro development plan. And by this, we are putting youth in the mainstream and not out of the mainstream. This year, we launched this summit. You'll see this draft youth policy on your desk very soon. The summit is key to ensuring that a sound foundation is in place to support the future policy, programming, and structures for the young people of this country. They're crying out, and I'm here to make sure their voices will be heard. Some would say, well, what is a national youth policy? Why do young people need all of this? When we were growing up, people said children should be seen and not heard. I don't know. A national youth policy represents a practical demonstration and a declaration of the priority and direction that a country intends to give to the development of youth. Practical demonstration and a declaration of young people as a priority. For the first time ever in human history, in Bahamian history, we will put this in writing. Mr. Speaker, I ask all of my colleagues to please take a look at the draft that we have. We hand this around as a monthly schedule. It covers strategic areas of youth identification, self-awareness, education and technology, capacity building, employment, social enterprise, young professionals, health sustainability, law, access to justice and safety, inclusion in decision-making, the decision-making process of government, youth empowerment, and restructuring of a ministry responsible for youth affairs, not a division, a ministry responsible for youth affairs. As you can see, I'm working myself out of a job. This policy will make certain that young people are given every opportunity to develop themselves and provide for themselves so that they may come to the table as equal partners in the development of this great nation. Mr. Speaker, I thank you. I ask all of our colleagues and youth leaders all around the country to please join us for this month of celebration. We hope to see you on Sunday. God bless you.
Thank you, Honourable Member. Order that communication be brought up. Order that the communication do lie on the table. Further statements and communication by ministers. Thank you, honourable members and ministers. Communications by the clerk. Then. Messages from the Governor General. Messages from the Senate. Motion for leave of absence, leave to resign seat, and new writs. Presentation of petitions. Presentation of reports of committees, adoption of reports of committees, first reading of bills. The chair recognizes the honourable member for Bain and Grandstown.
I beg leave to have read for the first time a bill for an act to provide for the modernization of the law governing the custody and rehabilitation of inmates and for purposes connected therewith.
Thank you, honourable members. It has been moved and seconded that the following bill be introduced and read a first time. A bill for an act to provide for the modernization of the law governing the custody and rehabilitation of inmates and for purposes connected therein. As many as are in favor that the bill be read a first time will remain seated, and those opposed will stand. Ordered that the bill be read a first time.
A bill for an act to provide for the modernization of the law governing the custody and rehabilitation of inmates and for purpose connected therewith.
Thank you. For the first reading of bills, the chair recognizes the honourable member for Bain and Grandstown.
Mr. Speaker, on behalf of the Honourable Minister of Transport and Aviation, I beg leave to introduce and have read for the first time a bill for an act to amend the Airport Authority Act to provide for the transfer to the Airport Authority of the ownership, operation, and management of the Marsh Harbour Airport situated on the island of Abaco, and for connected matters.
Thank you. Honorable members. It has been moved and seconded that the following bill be introduced and read a first time. A bill for an act to amend the Airport Authority Act to provide for the transfer to the Airport Authority of the ownership, operation, and management of the Marsh Harbor Airport situated on the island of Abaco and for connected matters. As many as are in favor will remain seated, and those opposed will stand. Ordered that the bill be read a first time.
A bill for an act to amend the Airport Authority Act to provide for the transfer to the Airport Authority of the ownership, operation, and management of the Marsh Harbor Airport situated on the island of Abaco and for connected matters.
For the first reading of bills.
Yeah, none, Mr. Speaker. Sorry.
For the first reading of bills. The chair recognizes the honourable member for Southern Shores.
Mr. Speaker, I beg leave to introduce and have read for the first time a bill for an act to provide for the establishment and regulation of the Bahamas Protected Areas Fund and for matters connected thereto.
Thank you, honourable member. Do we have a second?
Second.
It has been moved and seconded that the following bill be introduced and read a first time. A bill for an act to provide for the establishment and regulation of the Bahamas Protected Areas Fund and for matters connecting thereto. As many as are in favor will remain seated, and those opposed will stand. Ordered that the bill be read a first time.
A bill for an act to provide for the establishment and regulation of the Bahamas Protected Areas Fund and for matters connected thereto.
For the first reading of bills. Thank you, honourable members. Second reading and committal of bills. Committee of the whole House. Third reading and passing of bills. Consideration of Senate amendments. Resolutions. Member statements. The chair recognizes the honourable member for Long Island.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, it's indeed a pleasure to be back in this honorable House after the summer break. I'd just like to stand first on a personal matter, with your leave, to thank members of this honorable House who were very supportive of my family, myself, during the passing of my father. And I thank you very much for those who found time to attend the funeral. I would like to extend sympathy to you as well, Mr. Speaker, once again. I noticed your dad is here. I thought I heard that your uncle had actually passed, and it wasn't until you paid recognition to your sister that I realized that she was a younger girl at St. Andrew's School at the same time that I was there, and it's certainly my pleasure to welcome her as well. Do remember her. Always very brilliant, smart woman. So to see her in Ottawa being the principal, very pleased, Marva. Thank you. Mr. Speaker, I just wanted to stand to say that over the summer there have been a lot of deaths, and quite a few from the constituency which I represent, Long Island. And just last week we actually buried Miss Agnes Knowles, whose husband is of the lineage, the Knowles of Mangrove Bush, the sailing Knowleses. And it was certainly sad to come together. But I want to extend sympathies to all of my constituents who experienced deaths during the summer break, and I will make it a point to bring their names at a later date. Mr. Speaker, one of the things that I would like to have addressed once again, I raise again in this House, with the minister responsible for national insurance. We still seem to have a challenge in Long Island with the offices of national insurance having been closed and moved from the northern section of Long Island, placed into the central area of Long Island, making much hardship for individuals who not only have to make payments, but those elderly people that have to go and collect their pension checks, which once they would have gotten to graze, would have consumed quite a bit of their funds in hired drivers to get them there. And it's been several months that we haven't gotten any resolution on when that office will resume services back in the north. I would like to thank the Minister of State and Finance for accommodating, just before the close of the last fiscal period, the constituency funds, which we've been able to use on various projects throughout Long Island. And I'm sure that those organizations and those churches that would have received the funds are very grateful. So I thank you very much for this time, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Honourable Member. Member statements. The Chair recognizes Honourable Member for Golden Gate.
No, just in response, Mr. Speaker, to the member for Long Island. We recognize the challenge that it has created in moving the office from where it was. We have since purchased the building, and so we're looking at having it completely renovated. I'm not sure of the exact timelines in terms of when it will be completed, but as soon as I get that information, which should be hopefully before the end of the week, I'll let the member for Long Island know. Thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Member. Further member statements. The Chair recognizes Honourable Member for Mangrove Key and South Andrew.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Speaker, I'd like to follow briefly and also thank the member for Golden Island, good friend and join the member for Long Island and saying thank you to him in no small way for assisting the community of South Anderson in every way possible by making some basic funds available to us during this very challenging fiscal time. Mr. Speaker, quickly, on Sunday past, we celebrated with the Reverend Thomas Markey and his wife, Sister Madeline, at their 40th anniversary of pastoral and community leadership at Deliverance House of Prayer on Trade Avenue here in Nassau, and we had a good time at that celebration. And this weekend, we head to South Andros, my hometown, where we'll be celebrating with the Reverend James Pratt and his beautiful wife, Sister Pratt, at the St. Mark's Baptist Church in Congo Town. And they are part of the St. John's Particular Native Society in our beautiful country. We'll be joining Administrator Stephanie Ramming, local government practitioners, local and civic leaders in that community, celebrating with this hard-working kingdom citizen and also a proud son of the soil. Also, he serves in that community as Chief Counselor. And we want to commend the Reverend James Pratt as we look forward to being there this weekend on Sunday afternoon to celebrate with him. And I anticipate carrying and having many of my parliamentary colleagues down in South Andros with me to celebrate this great time. And so therefore, we look forward to the honorable member for Marathon, member for Sea Breeze, the member for Golden Gate, member for Sea Breeze, the member for Michael, member for Carmichael, who got a parade here in Nassau. The Minister of Finance is going to the Dolphins game, the biggest team ever in football, but we'll give him a little break this time around. Also, the member for Bamboo Town is going to be there. Fort Charlotte, we're going to carry a plane load down to South Andros this weekend to celebrate with my good friend, the Reverend James Pratt. If Peter Turnquist wants to come, we'll put him on the left wing. We'll put him there. My good friend for East End Grand Bahama. Mr. Speaker, as I get ready to wrap it up, it was just last week I got a call while I was in Brussels, very sad one, on the passing of Mr. Basil O'Neill, one who would have given so much to this community over the years, through the ages of sports sponsorship in no small way. Basil O'Neill, that great son of Andros, never daunted or did not have any disbelief within himself, and was always connoted as a strong but not weak-kneed Androsian son. He helped many persons who would have fallen into challenging times, paying light bills, school fees. Also a noted road builder, or what we call a road construction person in our society. A political candidate. But friend or foe, no matter who they are, how long they would have lived, they could not help but recognize the contribution of the late Basil O'Neill. In 2002, I remember very vividly how he sponsored the Carifta Games theme of our country. A man who gave much. And Mr. Speaker, my first 5 years being elected to this honorable place, there were some challenging moments. Basil Nemore was a friend to me. In the last election campaigning season, although we were in opposition, he said to the candidate of the Free National Movement at that time, I must also give Paiswell Forbes a few jobs in this community of Andros. Today, Basil has gone on to meet this reward. So to this benevolent soul who now looks down from the palace of glory, a philanthropist, humanitarian extraordinaire, thank you for giving so much to Andros directly and through other areas and avenues to make the lives of our people, although challenged, much easier. Thank you. To that patriot, nation builder, and that one who had the temerity to stand and be counted no matter what the challenge or the odds might have been. Thank you. If I were to use, Mr. Speaker, on this nice, cool autumn afternoon, a piece from a song that we would sing in the good old Church of God, as we look forward to saying farewell to Basil Nemore, my friend and my mentor and the lover of Andros. I would have to use one of those songs that Mama would have sung from the church hymnal back in Smithville. And it simply went like this: well done, my child, well done. Like Paul of old, you fought a good fight. Well done, my child. Basil, well done. May his soul and the souls of all the dearly departed rest in peace.
Thank you, Honourable Member. Member statements. Further member statements. The Chair recognizes the Honourable Member for South Beach. Microphone, member.
To stand in this honorable place after a short vacation break. Mr. Speaker, I am here standing to invite all of my colleagues on Saturday to the first annual South Beach Fest that will be held on the South Beach Park, Bougainville Park in South Beach. We had a commitment from our Prime Minister that he will be there, and we are asking all of our colleagues to join us. It promises to be a very exciting time, and we hope that all of South Beach, all of Nassau would attend. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Honourable Member. Further member statements. The Chair recognizes the Honourable Member for Mike Cowell.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I am just going to say to the people of Acklands, Crooked Island, Megwana, Nago, and Long Key that I am delighted to represent them. And for this occasion, I want to speak to two things. Firstly, Mr. Speaker, there is a self-help project, the building of a dock in northern Ackland, Deepwater Harbor, Chester, to be exact. And it's led by several persons from Acklands and Megwana and even Nassau. I will not be calling names, but they led the charge for this self-help project. And Mr. Speaker, I am advised that the project is going well, and they're going to launch the project officially by having an ocean liner dock for the first time in Deepwater Harbor in Acklands on Saturday, the 12th of October. And Mr. Speaker, this is significant because there's never been a deepwater dock in Ackland. And I want to thank Mr. Tom Hanna and his family for the sacrifices they continue to make to take heavy bulk freight, other goods to Acklands in very shallow waters, in Spring Point to be exact, where the water is no more than 8 to 10 feet deep at high tide. And so they are sacrificing to do what they do. But this self-help project has created another possibility for ship going to Ackland. And I pray that all of Ackland will galvanize around this project, including Tom Hanna and his family, because this is a bigger, better docking facility than is presently used. Of course, we can have both being used because one is about 25 miles from the other. And Ackland's is that long, 76 miles long. And so whilst both docks could be used, this docking facility that is presently being done will certainly cause shipments to be made directly from Miami to Ackland's of anything that you can put on a boat, and it would be directly landed on site in Ackland's, perhaps for the first time. And so I want to congratulate the leaders of this project. I'm not going to call names because, you know, when you start doing that and you leave out one name, you are politically finished. So I'm not going to do that. But it's led by men and women of Ackland and descendants of Ackland. And I am advised that the heavyweight liner, ocean liner, owned by Mr. Edens Taylor, will be docked at Ackland's for the first time in its history, when it can take off container freight. That's progress. And the government, I hope, will support this effort and make this one of the best family island docking facility in the future. And so I want all of Ackland's to know it's not a North Ackland's dock, it's not a Central Ackland's dock, it's an all Ackland's dock, even though it's located in North Ackland. But I want to make sure that every blooded Ackland Islander and those who are descendants from there support this project and make it a success when it has its soft opening on Saturday the 12th. Finally, Mr. Speaker, Regatta Harbor Island falls under my portfolio, and I want to invite all of my colleagues and friends to join me in Harbor Island next week, Thursday, Friday, straight through to Monday, when we're hoping to have one of the greatest regatta ever in North Eleuthera. Finally, Mr. Speaker, the family of Mr. Dienza Cox, who passed away lately and was laid to rest on Saturday, they have my deepest sympathy and those of my constituents. And I pray that his family will be strengthened in knowing that God can do anything but fail. And if they keep their hands in God's hand, he'll keep them safe until this storm passes by. Thank you very much, Speaker.
Thank you, Honourable Member. Further member statements. The Chair recognizes Honourable Member for Montague.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, it would seem that certain members have various members of the Cabinet to thank for loosening up funds to assist in their constituencies. Now, unfortunately, I don't seem to have that privilege. And I must say that I am extremely disappointed with the condition in which I find the Montague constituency. I don't know whether I'm supposed to thank the Ministry of Works for cutting a little bit of verge on Sunday, which I think is the first time that it has been addressed in several months. But the entire roadways of the constituency, in fact, probably the whole of this island, are an absolute disgrace. Now, I don't know whether the ministry has given contracts to persons, but certainly if they have, they are not performing their duties. And if they haven't, I have indicated on several occasions that I know of many people within the constituency who have the constituency at heart. They live there. They are appalled at the condition in which we find the verges, the roads, the park. If you go to Uriah McPhee Park, which is right next to the school, you can literally lose the children in the bush. The grass is this high. This is a school that has children in it, young children, 5 and 6 and 7. They could walk in that grass and lose them. Parents couldn't find them. It is just, it's hard to conceive And I have made numerous complaints to the ministry about the condition, and the first time that I have seen any improvement, as I said, was on Sunday past, where they cut a little bit of grass on Shirley Street, primarily Shirley Street. But the garbage collection, again, all along throughout the constituency. I'm tired of complaining. Montague Park there, the garbage is deplorable. The bathrooms, which were three-quarters completed when this government came to power, are still not open. You get the fishermen cleaning their fish. They got nowhere to go to the bathroom, so God knows where they go. And God knows where they wash their hands or whatever. Something has to be done. If we cannot take care of a simple park, if we cannot have bathroom facilities, if we can't clean the verges, what is this government, what are they doing? It's more important that they have fancy cars for the ministers and everybody that's got a red plate. I don't know how many cars there are in this island which are government-owned. It seems everybody that's got some connection with the government is given a car. You know, we got to get our priorities right. We need to get a change in attitude, because when you leave the island in the condition that it is at this moment, it is a disgrace. It is an embarrassment. It's certainly an embarrassment to me, and it should be to this government. Thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Member. Further member statement. The Chair recognizes the Honourable Member for Kalani.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, my complaints are almost similarly. Mr. Speaker, I lodged a complaint several months ago, especially with the West Bay Street area just west of Nesbitt. These sandbags would look like gun protective bunkers. And they had reassured me that work would have continued and I would see a very beautiful scene. Mr. Speaker, it's deteriorated. Until these sandbags are there, nothing has happened over the past 4 months, and it's an eyesore, Mr. Speaker. I think that needs to be corrected. If the government can't do anything about it, then move the sandbags. It looked much better before they placed these sandbags there. Mr. Speaker, we also have problems in the tropical garden area. The parks that the residents use regularly. Now the parks are catching me base height, the bush. You can't use the swing, everything is deteriorating. And Mr. Speaker, it's regularly used by the residents, where they would normally have their meetings, they would take their kids for playing, and the Minister of National Security, he knows how important family is in terms of preventing criminality. But with these types of parks, it's not helping the Minister of National Security, it's not helping the Bahamas. So, Mr. Speaker, that needs to be corrected. Mr. Speaker, there's also a serious issue in the Gambia area. Now, not because it's a small community means that the streets must be totally ignored. The holes are becoming so large, Mr. Speaker. I mean, some of them, if you were to sit in these holes, Mr. Speaker, only your glasses would be visible. I mean, and this is deplorable within a small community. The verges also needs to be dealt with, Mr. Speaker. And these things I have complained repeatedly, and it continues. It continues. So I want us to ask what exactly is going on. We're all aware of the song Funky Nassau, but they did not mean it literally. But it's now, we've now exposed the Funky Nassau, literally. It's now a Funky Nassau. But Mr. Speaker, I also have problems with the beaches. The beach just west of Saunders Beach. That is utilized by the community, and every weekend, it is left, trash is left all over the beaches, throughout the streets, and it needs continuous monitoring, continuous cleaning, because this is a nice beach that are used by the residents, but it's been allowed to deteriorate. So I ask the government to at least be cognizant of the environment. That is all we have. We're a touristic center. At least allow us to have a proper environment so that we can play, we can enjoy the beaches, we can enjoy the sceneries, we can drive our cars, we can walk the streets. If the lights are off, if you're not familiar with the area, you fall in a hole. You think it's a ditch in the streets. These need to be corrected, Mr. Speaker. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Honourable Member. Further member statements. The chair recognizes the honourable member for St. Anne's.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. First of all, Mr. Speaker, I just want to extend condolences to you on behalf of let me start over. I'd like to extend condolences to you on the passing of your uncle. And I've also wanted to extend condolences to the Roll family on Adley Street who lost their mother this past week. Mr. Speaker, I would also like to thank the St. Anne's Association for coming out on Saturday to clean the park on Sophia and Sunset Bridge. Mr. Speaker, we took it upon ourselves. We understand what's going on, that the country is filthy. I have written to the minister, myself. I've written to the director of works. I've written to the permanent secretary over the past year on the condition of the roads, speed bumps in St. Anne's, the verges, the parks. To no avail, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I want to ask the member for Cat Island and San Salvador to please tell us when he's going to have a crew clean the park in Nassau East North. Mr. Speaker, Nassau East North cannot use the park at all. I hear about waist-high speed and everything else. Well, Mr. Speaker, I took the member for East Grand Bahama and Montague during the lunch hour, and I showed them what is going on. The Culbert's Hill, a main thoroughfare in this country, Mr. Speaker, that traverse from Yamacraw constituency, Elizabeth constituency, onto the Eastern Road, Johnson Road, Mr. Speaker. Another major thoroughfare in this country. My God, Mr. Speaker, it's filthy. We need to get on with it. The Minister of Works need to address this immediately. I thank you.
Thank you, honourable member. Further member statements. The chair recognizes the honourable member for East Grand Bahama.
Thank you, Speaker. Speaker, in both the case of St. Anne's and Montague, they have not overstated their case. In particular, I think should be of concern to the member for Montague is the state of the park there at Uriah McPhee. It's not an understatement to say that that weed is at least waist high, and it is certainly not safe. And even the part that was actually mowed, there's so much trash on that park that I'm sure it is a hazard to those children. And I really believe that if we can't keep the parks, the general parks clear, at the very least the ones next to the schools ought to be kept in some kind of condition. I think that's the least we can do for our children. So I'd just like to support them in their plea for that. Mr. Speaker, the member for South Andrews mentioned Basil Nemore, the late Basil Nemore, and I'd just like to add my condolences to his family, the former Minister of State, Fenton, and his wife, Paula, on the passing. Mr. Nemore was a legend, not only in Andrews, as the member mentioned, but certainly in Grand Bahama, his contributions are legendary. He had a particular affinity for the youth. Most people associate him with sports, but he was also very much involved in the academics and the well-being of these children. And certainly, if there is such a thing as an unsung hero, he is one of those. And I don't think that you will find too many people who will have anything negative to say about Mr. Nemore, a true patriot, a true gentleman, and a person that we can all emulate in terms of giving back to his community. The only mistake that he made, I believe, is I heard the member for South Andrews mention that he was a mentor. I don't know how we get over there. But be that as it may. The other person I'd like to just remember is the late Coach Errol Bodie, who also passed since our last sitting. Coach Bodie, again, is one of those legendary coaches in the Bahamas who did not receive necessarily in his lifetime all that he should have. Hopefully, posthumously, he will receive some of the award, some of the reward, and has been suggested that the track in Grand Bahama may be named in his honor. I certainly hope so. He deserves that honor. Another plain-spoken gentleman who's not afraid to tell you it like it is, a tremendous mentor and leader in our community, and one who has contributed mightily to sports in particular, but to the development of young people, and I dare say adults, in our country. And so I certainly want to pass on our condolences to his wife Cecile and his two children, Mia and Clifford, on the passing. I'd also like to just remind the residents of Grand Bahama in particular, but certainly the wider Bahamas, of the tongue cracking in McLeanstown, which will be held on the 12th of October. This is an annual festival that is world-renowned now, Mr. Speaker, and certainly the committee has a tremendous program lined up of entertainment, and I'm sure that you will enjoy that festival. And so I'd like to encourage as many people as possible to come on down to Grand Bahama and see how the other side lives. It's not all about Freeport. The settlements to the east offer a wonderful, picturesque opportunity to enjoy a tranquil quality of life and experiences. Lastly, Mr. Speaker, during the summer break, I had an opportunity, along with the Minister for Grand Bahama and a team from the Ministry of Works and other agencies, to visit two areas in particular that the government has outlined in its agenda for works, that being the seawall in Smith's Point and the dock at Waterkey. Both projects very, very much needed, and I certainly want to thank the government for the attention to the issue thus far. I am hopeful that we will get a date when that work will commence in short order. One of the points, though, that that raised, as well as some other challenges that I've had with some of the work that I've been trying to do in McLeanstown in particular, is the resources available to us through the Ministry of Works in Grand Bahama. Certainly Mr. Tynes is doing the best that he can, but he is a one-man band for the most part, and he certainly needs help. And so I would like to just request that the member for Cat Island may want to look at the resources that are available in Grand Bahama for Ministry of Works and see if we can get some help to push out some of these projects so that we don't end up a year from now still talking about the start of these projects, because they are very important to the residents in those particular areas. And so I'd just like to make that plea. Thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Member. And thank all honourable members. That concludes our member statements for this evening. Appointment of select committees. Instructions to select committees. Discharge of select committees. Notices for future meetings. The chair recognizes honourable member for Bain and Grandstand.
I move of divisional matters standing in the names of members of the government or the governing side to be renewed.
All matters removed in the name of the government. The chair recognizes honourable member for Central Grand Bahama.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I wish to renew matters in the name of the opposition on the agenda.
Very well. Thank you, honourable members. Adjournment. The chair recognizes honourable member for Bain and Grandstand.
Mr. Speaker, I move that the House adjourns to Wednesday, the 9th of October at 10 a.m.
It has been moved and seconded that the House at its rising do adjourn until Wednesday, the 9th of October at 10 a.m. in the year of our Lord 2013. As many are in favor will remain seated. Those opposed will stand. Adjournment.
Move that the House is now adjourned.
We have a second. It's been moved and seconded that the House do now adjourn. As many are in favor will rise.